Welcome. I'm so glad we could finally get together. And I guess to get started, you have so much going on, and I'm a big fan of your work, and you have a huge following out there. I mean, one of your posts, I think you mentioned, looking today, is almost 1 million views. So many of our audience might know your story already, but I'd like to get to it. If we could go back in time and just start with what were the circumstances that led you to joining the service? If you could just tell us about that.
Yeah, so I joined the Marine Corps. I was, doing job interviews and things like that after high school. And I kept running into these people. And during the interview, they would say stuff like, well, we are looking for a little bit more experience. And then I'd go to the next one and the next one. And I started to feel like, golly, if nobody will give me an opportunity, then how do I get experience? And so I ended up joining the Marine Corps. I enlisted and thought, well, you know what I'm going to do? And I was going to college at night and trying to work. And so I thought, you know what, I'll just join the Marine Corps and then get some experience. And then eventually my goal was to become an officer. So I thought I'll do this, but I was taking way too long. And so I thought I'll be enlisted and I'll get my degree and then I'll go commission after that. And that was indeed exactly what I did. I enlisted and then started taking college at nighttime after work. And then I applied for the MESEP program, which is the Marine Enlisted Commissioning Education Program. And they take you out of the fleet and then send you to college. And so that's where I was able to get my degree while I was on active duty.
Yeah, that's excellent. So you were enlisted and then became commissioned. That's a rare find. That's wonderful. You saw both sides of the house there.
Yeah, no, it was a great experience for sure.
Absolutely. And if I could, maybe tell our audience a little bit of some of your travels, some of your adventures, perhaps.
Yeah. So let's see. So travel. So I was after MOS school. So I was able, and I think I learned early on when I was in MOS school, I was the honor graduate. And so the first person gets to pick where they're going to go. And so I had went to Cherry Point. But I knew I just wanted to have control, right? But I realized when I checked into that first duty station in Cherry Point, North Carolina, that, I checked in and they said, well, you're the honor graduate. What unit do you want to go to? And then I started to realize, like, wow, like you just have to work hard and then you're going to get, like, there was 4, PFCs and I was able to get meritoriously promoted. So they were like, well, you get to pick, and I was like, okay, I am going to really enjoy how this is working out. So work really hard and, get your first pick and get your first pick at your unit. So I left Cherry Point and then went to Beaufort, South Carolina. And I was there. And then I applied for MESEP out of Beaufort. And then I went and commissioned. I went to the Citadel for college in Charleston, South Carolina. And then after that, I commissioned and then kind of started my TBS, all the training. And then I went to Camp Lejeune and I deployed out of Camp Lejeune to Iraq, probably about 3 months. I don't think I was there longer than 3 or 4 months. And then we were gone. And we did, just training and then we left. And then after that, I went to do a B billet and I went to Parris Island and did a B billet. I wanted to go back to Recruit Depot. I felt like, being a recruit and then being able to be a series commander and knowing exactly what those girls were going through was really important to me to be able to be a part of that. And then I left and I went to school and they sent me to EWS. And then I went to the Pentagon. And that's really what happened. I tell people all the time, recruiting is one of those jobs that, like, once you do it as a major, you kind of find yourself going back to it because, you've had this experience. Well, I had an experience with protocol. And so I was really blessed with an opportunity to be the commandant's protocol officer in the Pentagon.
Oh, wow.
And so that really kind of set me up for the rest of my career, because that event planning which is inevitably what I took and started my own company with, but planning events and organizations and traveling the world to make sure that a service chief can walk in a door and is ready to, to have a conversation with a service chief from another country is, got a lot of planning and details with that. So that was really where it happened. So then I did protocol there, and then I went back to school, went back to the Pentagon, and I finished up my career as the Deputy Commandant for Information Staff Secretary, which is another 3-star billet.
Yeah.
So
incredible.
that was kind of my journey through the Marine Corps.
A lot of air miles too ranked up as well.
Yeah, that's right.
That's fantastic.
It seems a lot simpler when I just say it like that instead of what happened in 20 years.
Well, that's fantastic. And I know this is tough and maybe unfair, but I'm going to ask it anyways. So
yeah,
you were surrounded by so many leaders, and of course you were a leader. So it's not fair for this next question, but I'm gonna say it anyways.
Don't you ask me.
No. Among all of the lessons, that's a long
yeah.
list. I mean, you had so many formal schools, so many experiences, different units, different bases. There's no shortage of lessons, but is there one in particular that maybe you personally are still like it's at the top of mind with your day-to-day life now? Something that's just so prevalent all the time that
yes.
you took out of that career?
Yeah. I've told this story to a couple people before, but we went on a trip, and Gerald Dunford was we had a great trip, but he said we told him how well everything had, he had just had this engagement on stage, and he just did so good, and he made some comment about, you, Misty, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but you've got to be the most prepared. And I was like, that's good, because I know for a fact I'm not going to be the smartest person in the room, but I can stay up later, I can wake up earlier, I can study longer, like I can be the most prepared for an engagement. And so there are times that I'm like, coming home from a networking event these days, and I have an inbox full of things that I need to get done, and I can like, okay, I need to be the most prepared. So I know exactly where I belong, and it's like right back at the computer, even though sometimes you're just exhausted. So I think that stuck with me, that I'm like, you know what, that's the one thing you have control over. So, read a little bit more, study harder, stay up later.
Yeah, I love that. Amen. That's no one can outwork you. That's a great,
yeah.
Love it. Love it. So, okay. So, I mean, you spent over 20 years serving our country. So that's incredible. And like all veterans, when you leave, right, huge adjustment. So could you walk us through what that part of the journey was for you, and some of the lessons learned out of that process?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was a lucky one in the sense I talked to a lot of transitioning veterans, and some of them will tell me they just don't know what they want to do next. Like they're just not sure. For me, it was about 5 years before I retired, and I was at a retired EOS. General Kelly was at this event, and I asked him how retirement was going, and he explained to me, well, Misty, I'm, doing my travel and doing this, and people are calling me, and he's like naming all these things, and I'm like, I'm going to recreate that, because it hit me at this moment that I'm like, I do that every day, all day, active duty, and these generals need that same support when they're retired.
Right.
And so that is really this conversation that, and I tell people all the time, because I'm hoping it's going to get back to him one day. And so I tell this story to say, like, that was 5 years prior to me retiring. And so my hobby became planning and writing down, and a business plan, and how to do it, how to structure it, how to sell it, everything I could do. Any spare moment, there would be times that my husband would say, like, you're not retiring for 3 more years. I'm like, I know, but I just got to get this down. So for me, the journey was different, because I knew exactly what I was going to do, and I was just waiting for the chance to finish this part of my career and start a company that was going to do just that. So that was kind of the journey. The lessons that I learned, I think, are the reason why I have a monthly webinar to share transitioning veterans. I didn't do what I teach, and that part is the struggle. And we talk about networking. I share about, like, you have to dig the well before you need to, before you're thirsty. you need to dig a well of a network before you need them. And so if you can picture 6-12 months from now, what do you want your network to see you do? So if you're holding up that retirement thing and says, hey, network, I just retired, but you only have 25 people in your network, then nobody ever saw it,
Right.
But if you spent 12 months prior doing something you want them to see, then you start making connections with people and you start linking in with them. You attend events, you find the civilian equivalent to what you do. If you're a contracting officer, then you join contracting officer organizations and you start going to those events and learning from them and becoming their friend. And then when 3 months, 2 months out from retirement or transition is happening, then that person that you've had coffee with 15 times is like, well, let me introduce you to somebody because you're their friend. And you can't do it, after the last note of your retirement ceremony. It just is too late. And then that's when people struggle, but nobody tells you that. So that's the part that I just try to share in my webinar is like how to do that, how to build and really start leaning in, even though you're like, I've got plenty of time. You really don't. And the more time you have building a group of people and supporters, the better.
Yeah. A preemptive strike. Yeah. Because I see that on a lot. These folks, and they're not doing anything wrong. They didn't know, like you just said. No one told them. You weren't part of their life yet, but they say, oh, I retired today. So okay.
Yeah. And you're like, you look and they don't have anybody to tell.
Right.
Or the people, like if they're retiring IT professionals, then you should have 3,000 IT professionals in your network.
Yeah.
But you've only held it up. And the only people in your network are DOD friends that are like, Sergeant Smith, that's your neighbor,
Right.
and you're like, well, he's not going to help you get a job. So you got to put the right people in there to share it with.
Yeah, I love that. So are you still doing the monthly
I do. Yeah. It really does help me reach as many people as I can. So the last Thursday of every month, I do a webinar. Yeah. And I usually advertise, you could go through some of my posts, but I'll put a link out there that is a registration link and then they get sent the Zoom.
Great. I'll make sure we promote that for you too. After this airs, we'll have a link there. So let's get into the business. Just, I guess, take a moment to define the name, how it operates, and who your clientele are, so that our listeners can get that to the right folks.
Yeah. So it's Concierge on Call, and I really wanted to find an acronym because everybody does every acronym, so it waters down no matter what you want. So I was like, well, it needs to be the COC, because to me, my clients know that if you call the COC, it's going to get done. Like you need to tell them what's going on and how it needs to get done. So that was important to me. And what I do is there's two kind of like services that I provide, and I support retiring veterans that are starting a consulting business. People will sometimes say, why do you just help retired generals or flag officers? And I usually will respond with, it doesn't have to be them. I've helped, colonels and captains, but it's really for someone that's starting a consulting business. And the majority of 3- and 4-star generals are the ones that are doing that. Because what I'm doing for them is there's two different services. I offer a 16-week program where I help them stand up their business, get their, the function part of their entity to make it a legal entity, the systems, the CRMs, the domain, all the things to make it an efficient invoicing. And then we go into a strategy. And for about weeks 6 to 12 is a networking and a social media strategy to introduce them, kind of reintroducing them back to the world, because they need to create a network. And just like the rest of us, they don't do it before. They do have a lot more of a name recognition than the rest of us, for some, depending on the billet that they held. And so I just help them get in front of the right people and, present classes or opportunities that could turn into a consulting engagement or a speaking engagement. And then following that, or if you are already an established business, then we do the executive support. So all that stuff that I did in protocol and in event planning, I basically will assign an executive assistant, and I will support that executive assistant in all of their back office needs. So anything that they would do as like a staff secretary or as an executive assistant, all their travel and engagements, coordination, fee negotiations, anything that they need while they're focused on being a consultant or being a conference attendee or a speaker, then we're in the back making sure that their business is still running efficiently.
Yeah, that's great. And I think for me, one of the things I love the best that you are helping these senior officers, these high level leaders, these very capable people that our nation has spent a fortune training. You know, you're helping them get into perhaps private sector or other organizations where they can continue to lead and help people. So that actually is something I would love to see more of.
Yeah.
You know, I could talk all day about, you know, some veterans that are in the C-suites of America and they run superior organizations, in my opinion, than some that don't. And I've worked for somewhere I go, who's in charge of this place? You know, in the service, it would have been done this way. So I love that you're bringing very, very capable folks into the civilian sector, and they're going to help more people because of that. That's wonderful. That's great.
Yeah.
So, well, this is really interesting. Could I just ask you the name of the website?
Yeah, you can find more information at www.nextcoc.com.
Okay. And if you don't mind, I'll just ask now, that 16-week program you mentioned, is that your sought after CEO program?
That's right.
I've heard very good things. I've heard very good things of that program. So we can talk offline. That's fantastic. So yes, our listeners should definitely, you know, look into this further. And if I could, you know, I always ask this fun little question. If you had the ability to do a little time travel with all the adventures and all the things you're doing today, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self that was experiencing that, you know, oh, you need more experience and all that, you have a moment to talk to a young Mitzi, what would be the message to her?
Yeah. It's such a good question. I love time travel. I think that would be so fun to talk to her. I think that it would be you're gonna be fine. Like, keep doing it. Keep taking chances. Believe in yourself. Follow your gut. It's really it is true north. You know, don't second guess yourself. You have, you know, good instincts. And don't let people put doubt in your mind, and it will all work out. I think that I would tell her that.
That's great. Fantastic. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this segment. Again, I've been sitting here talking to retired Marine Major Misty Cook and the founder of the COC. And I appreciate you having me on. We'd like to do it again in the future.
Yeah, I'll give you an update, see how things are going.
That'd be fantastic. And folks, we'll be right after this.